Welcome to Polishing Marbles. I'm Audrey, and today on my podcast, I will be talking about how I spent my last Thanksgiving in San Diego, dropping codes and working with the perfectly balanced energies of the masculine and feminine, while receiving divine understanding about how our periodic table of elements works to create bonds that range from equitable and inert to vampiric, mirroring our own human relationship dynamics. I also witnessed an extraordinary application of this lesson through themes around both the Great Gatsby and Alice in Wonderland. For instance, what does it really mean to paint the roses red? I will offer a preview of next month's upcoming live events and wrap up with a channel from my galactic guide Osho, who is simply chomping at the bit to share what this new era of Aquarius is set to bring the collective through the air element, which feels literally like home to me. I'm thrilled to have this platform to share these beautiful insights with you. One of my greatest joys is witnessing people step into their own true channel. So remember, you are your own guru. Look to your heart for your own truth, as love will always illuminate your path. Hello. Welcome to Polishing Marbles. This podcast is going to be really exciting. I thought long and hard about what to discuss today, and it felt really important to reflect on where I was a year ago. Being that this week is Thanksgiving, I don't really enjoy the process of Thanksgiving. I've always said I really like carbohydrates, so it's a great carbohydrate holiday, but being that I'm not really a supporter of colonialism or post-colonial trauma amongst Nations tribes, and I'm very much aligned with the earth and the indigenous, who likes Thanksgiving except to have, like, in capitalism, a day off and a day to eat, unless, of course, you don't get along with your family, in which case it is a disaster. So I thought I would talk thematically about what I was doing last Thanksgiving. Of course, this is all coming um, at the end of my month-long grid work cycle that I took 4 trips in a month. I returned yesterday from Chicago, the Windy City, and I am not yet integrated enough to be able to speak to my trips. I'm starting to get it, but I really feel like this is a good time to pause on the present and share with you some really extraordinary things that happened last year for me when I was gridding in San Diego over Thanksgiving. So, that in mind, I really wanted to start by sharing a oracle card I pulled already from the Alice in Wonderland Oracle deck, because we're dealing with the theme of painting the roses red, what that means. And also, my dear friend Shayna texted me this morning to let me know that today is an anniversary of the publication of Alice in Wonderland. So it feels perfectly suited. This deck is actually, it's really beautiful. It's got, the artwork is just like the big eyes. Um, and it's not like one of the decks that has like a personality that's going to be uplifting. It's one of the decks where, like, my daughter and I, if we need to pull cards, she'll be like, what kind of vibe are you looking for the cards? Because she has a really mean tarot deck, and I'm like, give me the hard truth. So she'll bring out the mean tarot deck, and I work with oracles more than tarot. She works with tarot. And so this would be one of the oracles where you're not looking for the fuzzies, you're looking for the straight truth. And so I pulled this card, uh, which is called Choices. And she looks super bummed out. She looks so like, "Ugh, what's happening?" Um, it says feeling blocked and restrained. And I know why I pulled this card, given what I'm going to share. But we're going to have the fun of reading it right now. Okay, so There were doors all around the hall, but they were all locked. And when Alice had been all the way down one side and up the other, trying every door, she walked sadly down the middle, wondering how she was ever going to get out again. When we are changing in order to find our own personal wonderland, we need to keep the momentum going in whatever area of life the magic of change is arriving. This means leaving the in between lands of the idea and entering into the choices we must make to move forward. May seem to you, as it does to Alice, that each choice presents a potential problem, that there is not one clear choice or way to go. Each door is locked, too small, impossible to open, or to even fit through. But Alice had not yet found the way. You too are on the road to finding the way to unlock the opportunities that are all about you. It may also be that the various tests of courage will reveal the key to the door, which will see you enter Wonderland. Right now, you have choices. Each of them may seem to have one or more drawbacks or obstacles. You feel that if you do not know how to get through to the other side, perhaps you are not meant to go there at all. But look about you. There are solutions. There are ways through. You can create the next step, but you must be brave and willing to try something very new. And then you must be ready to deal with the uncertainty taking this step shall bring. If you peek through the keyhole, as Alice does, you will see the doorway leads to the loveliest garden you can imagine. You must find a way through, because the delights that lie on the other side are worth this test. The challenge is how to reach this place. You may need to grow smaller. You may need to grow larger. You may need to change yourself in ways that initially seem very strange to you. For the divination portion of this, it says, choosing which way to go, a moment of decision, uncertain of what is best or what to do next, feeling like each door is closed, wanting to reach the next stage of your life, but not seeing the single way through. This is a reversed meaning for you. It's giving up too soon, feeling daunted by challenges, or stuck in an in-between place, an unwillingness to alter habits in order to transform, reluctance to move forward, a lack of curiosity. What's so cool about this, besides this picture of Starry Night, I just saw Van Gogh at the Chicago Institute of Art. Um, what's so cool is that I've been drawing a lot of like Bardo cards or in between cards, and because we're in this transformative space, like Pluto just went to Aquarius, we are in this like really liminal in betweenness. And I feel like a lot of people are finishing cycles and starting new cycles. And so there's uncertainty when we're breaking old patterns, especially like if they're matrix related, like, if you're changing jobs or you're seeking a new way to approach relationships or friendships or just your spare time, it can feel like, am I doing something wrong? So definitely relatable. I'm curious how you relate to it, because I think a lot of people are feeling this way, honestly. So, with that in mind, as a nice little starting point, I want to share about my last year of grid work on Thanksgiving and then moving into some other themes. They will all come together, I promise. Um, but I think that you will find it very worthy of your time and attention. Okay, so last year I was drawn to San Diego. I was going to San Diego for a specific purpose, which was to really exchange codes. Now, when I say that, the exchange of codes, sometimes like when you're gridding or just as a person on this path, you get a very intensive message like, I must be in this place for this reason, or I must be in this place and I don't know the reason. Sometimes it's definitely that. That was my whole last month. But it could be because something needs to be like taken there, like as far as like grid work. Like I've planted, this is not clearly the one I planted, but there are some mandaras that I've been told that I need to plant, or there are specific codes that I hold vibrationally that I need to go physically to a place and share those codes, whether it's through just me simply vibing by being Audrey full time, or I need to do some actual grid work, like light codes or speaking to the land or dropping something in the water or, so there are those kinds of codes that so when I say dropping codes, I mean, uh, gosh, why does that remind me of that one song, Dropping Tags? That's what it is. Oh, Macklemore. That's funny. I'm not dropping tags. Or that's popping tags, right? Sorry. My daughter would roll her eyes at me right now. No, I was dropping codes in San Diego, and around that time, I was getting pummeled with information and upgrades and downloads and all the things. And so I had just taken my first trip to Shasta that September, October, and this was in November. But in between, I had gone to Salt Lake and done grid work in City of Rocks, where I almost got lost because there's no service there. And I was like the only person in that national park. It was beautiful. I survived. Also scary. But so I had been like doing gridding that whole couple month period, and I started getting all this information, largely through this book, which I've definitely shared before in like some of my events. The Universal One, by Walter Russell. I was getting so much information around how energy works in terms of like rotating, like like picture a tornado, like how that moves to create levity, how energy expels, how it expresses itself or builds up to then express itself. And also a lot around the balancing of masculine and feminine elements. Now, I wasn't a science person in college or in high school. Basically, I could never relate to science teachers. I thought they were really boring. That's it. Really boring. It felt like so much of those topics were regurgitated information instead of actually learning and application. I really love and respect teachers when they know how to speak to all children. Part of it is being burned out. Part of it is not feeling like appreciated in your role as a teacher. I completely honor and understand that. But when you really get an opportunity to work with someone who has passion for what they do, it's like it spills out into you and you can really receive it well. Because I didn't really love math either. And I did have one amazing math teacher in college. He was a grad student. He loved what he did. He could look at my eyeballs and see if I got it or not. That was one of the best math classes I ever took because it was engaging. It wasn't like, I'm preaching to you, this is how it's done. If you don't get it, then too bad. I actually had a professor in college. I asked him a question about statistics. It was in grad school, and he's like, if you don't understand, I don't know what to tell you. You're the teacher? Like, I feel that you're exactly who I need to talk to in this situation. But that aside, the best science teachers I've ever had are non-physical beings. Like Pythagoras has come to me on so many occasions to teach me concepts that are not always related to math and science, surprisingly. But this book brings with it a lot of knowledge that is activating. And so Walter Russell is he was a scientist and a metaphysicist that was in the crony group with Einstein, and he ended up not being as widely distributed or known of because he really engaged his narrative also with the concept that there is a higher being that orders everything. So like God was involved in science. How about that? I always said like, where do they think science came from? Like, it's not one or the other. Like, science didn't just spontaneously exist. There's order here, and order came to be for a reason. So, I was getting a lot of information about, I'm trying to find this. I think I shared it in my last podcast, an image of um, basically like an image like this, where something's either being created or destroyed. Something's either radiative or it's got this quality of crushing. So we've got the masculine element that is trying to express, and the feminine element that is trying to contain. So like a proton and an electron trying to like even it out. And in order to do that, there has to be like for something to not be reactive elementally, it needs to be balanced. If it's not balanced, it could, react and do all sorts of crazy stuff. And so I kept getting that San Diego is like the perfect weather, right? I had never been there before, but I had heard that it's kind of this perfect sweet spot of temperature like all the time. The masculine and feminine is really aligned there to make it just perfectly delightful to be there. And so when I went, I was experiencing this balance. Now, what is so cool is that prior to getting there, of course, I don't just learn a thing and that's the only thing. I was getting information from every angle. So some of that is always in media. And so I was, of course, listening to musicals as well because my daughter is a musical person. And there is this musical, Hades Town, which is all about the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. And really, it's the fall from grace. It's the splitting of the masculine and feminine. It's basically when Atlantis fell. It's that story of how the splitting happened between this like perfect balance into the and cast it out into of the paradise where everything is beautiful into these extremes and darkness. And Hades Town is Greek mythology involving Persephone and Hades and really coming into this place of industry and steel and minerals, really earthy. We've fallen, we're low, we're in the place where money and scarcity and power dynamics take play over human connection and love. And so there's a part of this musical that talks about how the weather is so extreme. It's either too hot or it's too cold. It's never just right anymore. The seasons are just so wrong. It's just it doesn't feel right. Which is a narrative to how things are out of balance between the masculine and feminine because we're not in that sweet spot anymore. We've been in these extremes. And so I'm getting all this information. Um, and I felt drawn to watch the Gatsby, which is a movie by Baz Luhrmann that basically is about the Great Gatsby, the book, The Great Gatsby. And I remember being, told to read that in high school, and I didn't always read my assignments in high school because they were not always engaging. But I did like The Great Gatsby. It was small, so I didn't have too much time to get distracted, and I liked the idea of the Roaring Twenties and the wildness. It was like really the Bohemians of my era, but in a different time. Baz Luhrmann has also done movies like Moulin Rouge, which is one of my favorites, also about the divine feminine and masculine being split up. And of course, he's done a great rendition of Romeo and Juliet, as we know, also about the masculine and feminine being split up. So it's he does things so visually big and stunning, and there's so much stimuli, and everything's just so grand. And it's really reflective of this era. So I'm watching, Gatsby, and I'm realizing the story. If you're not familiar with the story, just to give you like a little rundown, Gatsby, when he was younger, he was in love with this girl, Daisy, and she comes from a good family, but he didn't. He came from a very poor family, and they weren't equitable to be able to be together. So he ends up leaving to make his way of it. Basically, hero's journey kind of situation. He goes and fights in World War I, where he becomes like a war hero. And when he gets back from the war, he stumbles across an older man who doesn't really have his own family for inheritance. And they become close. He teaches them everything he knows about becoming a gentleman, making it in the world. He makes his way, I believe, through bootlegging, and he becomes this just grand expression of wealth from nothing to this. But in the meantime, Daisy has married someone of means, and come to think of it, this is an awful lot like the Notebook too. She comes to marry someone of means she's not happy with, he cheats on her, blah blah blah, but so that she can be safe, that she can have the life that she wants. So he is so deeply in love with her, he actually like moves across the waterway from her and befriends her cousin to get close to her again. But it's a story of really the masculine and feminine that have been split by this worthiness factor of capitalism and industry, and the desperation to have that, the desperation to be enough, the desperation to prove one's worth through material means. Now, the reason this is important is it's so greatly part of the fall that we fell from grace in this split of the masculine and feminine. And when we did so, we dropped in our dimension to the third dimension, where everything is so dense and it's very much around material. But that's not our true self. That's not our true self at all, because we're these eternal beings. But everything we've been taught in this realm is that you're only worthy if you identify as something that makes you a lot of money. So when someone's like, "What do you do for a living?" after they meet you, you are then faced with, do I tell them I wait tables? Because immediately they'll make all these assumptions about you. Or if you have achieved something, you'll want to express that to get some kind of clout. I have been absolutely someone who has fallen into that trap on both ends because I was a waitress and I felt horrible for it. And then I got my master's and became a counselor. And then in contrast, I was like, I'm proud of that. So then I'd be, instead of like, I'm a waitress, I'd be like, I'm a counselor. But neither of those things have to do with who I really am. I am that I am, you know? But these stories are representations of that wound of dropping in dimension in that split and being in this place that is of such density. And why that has something to do with this is that everything in our realm is in a state of becoming, like being created or destroyed, or it's in perfect stasis. But everything's always moving and changing because of the law of vibration. And so these stories that are about attaining material success, they are always fleeting because nothing in this realm that is in this dimension goes without being destroyed or disintegrating, because we are in an imbalanced realm that is not aligned with the feminine, which is creation. So everything is going to eventually disintegrate, you know, because according to just science, if a molecule, elements put together to make something, is imbalanced with the masculine or positive charges, it will create radiation, which destroys stuff. That's just how it works. And so I personally feel good that this explains why every road everywhere is always under construction. I swear to God. Everywhere I go, construction. Why? I was talking with my dad not long ago, who has dementia. And it was like, Daddy, because I call him Daddy. Like, Daddy, do you think it's interesting that since you were born and your dad had one of the first cars that existed, like an old car, don't you think it's interesting that the mechanics are still basically the same of the first cars and that you still have to get new tires? Haven't they figured out, like, how do you get can you just like get tires that last forever? Why are roads still disintegrating? Can't they figure this out? And my dad, who is a brilliant man who loops around things, he's like, well, seems to me that someone has the technology for it, but it's being kept away from people because they gotta make money off tires. And I'm like, Daddy, you're right. You're right. So what does this have to do with San Diego? Okay, so I take in this Gatsby movie. I'm learning about the masculine and feminine to create this balance. I'm taking in the information around the actual like periodic table and how to build things so that they're non-reactive, so that they're really in their greatest alignment, which is an inert gas that doesn't react to anything. It's like helium. It's just vibing all the time and it doesn't react to stuff. It's basically like an ascended element. And it's also light. It floats because of levity of being ascended. It's like all on the nose. But when I was booking my trip to San Diego, I found a Gatsby themed Airbnb, and I have this whole relationship with Airbnb where I will like set an intention for a trip and I'll be like, okay, if I see something I'll go on this trip if dot 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 Airbnb shows me where I'm supposed to be. And it's like this whole thing. So I find this Airbnb that's Gatsby themed right after seeing Gatsby and dealing with this masculine and feminine, divine masculine and feminine situation. Right. And so I get there and it looks beautiful, of course. Like Airbnb has the pictures and it's like beautiful. There's like gold stuff, themed stuff everywhere. It looks really like crisp and shiny. And so of course I book it and thinking, cool, cool, this is great, cool. And I've been disappointed before. So I'm like, my expectations are not amazing. But it was staying in Old Town San Diego, which is a lovely area, frankly. There's just really some beautiful restaurants nearby, walking distance to a market. It was lovely. I enjoyed all of it. But but I get there, I get into the Airbnb. Clearly nobody had actually like booked it in a while. It had a Murphy bed, which is fine. Um, but I can't tell you, like the pictures of the Airbnb were clearly before anyone had ever stayed there. And since then, 5,000 people have stayed there because all of the things that were shiny and beautiful were really distorted by the time I got there. Like the shelves were dusty. There were no comforts of any kind. There weren't any things provided. It looked as though the toilet had been spray painted gold at one point, but then they realized, oh shit, when I put water in it and it's washed, it chips away. Like it was really like it had a spray painted gold toilet that had chipped over time. So it was just wow. It was literally the thing that came into mind the second I got there was this is painting the roses red. It's appearing as though it is one thing and being something else. Now, I was ironically on this trip, there was this gorgeous, gorgeous outdoor coffee shop that I went to every morning I was there. It just had hanging gardens, and even though it was like they were starting to celebrate Christmas season because it was really the Thanksgiving holiday, there were like holiday themed things, but it was like 72 degrees and it was beautiful and sunny and gorgeous plants everywhere. And I would sit in the cafe and I would journal and I found my entries from it before starting to record. I would be journaling about like bonds, ionic covalent bonds. I was making lists of how things bond and different elements. I was drawing the atomic uh structure and so I was processing, and I also had Alice in Wonderland I had just purchased. And so I was or through the looking glass. And so I was reading that while studying this as an activation. And I was staying in this place that's tarnishing. And I'm thinking, like, what does painting the roses red mean? What does it mean? Because I used to think she's being fake, like the queen, who's like a big fat meanie, not fat, but like a big mean woman, and that she was acting as though she had these beautiful red roses, but she was pretending because they weren't red at all, they were white. And so I've thought so much about that. To me, it feels just it's pretending to be something you're not. It's being fake. It's not being authentic is one perspective. And when I was in that Airbnb watching this tarnished chip gold, I was like, this is painting the roses red. I actually said that in my review of the Airbnb. I was like, this is painting the roses red. I'm sure he had no idea what I was talking about, but it just felt fake. But I've given it so much thought over this last year because I've used it in terms of something that's fake, but really it feels too, because that story is the fall of the divine masculine and feminine as well, and the divine feminine as Alice trying to find her way back to her power. It's a great allegorical story. But the king is sleepy and tiny and just gives all his power away and just says, yes, dear, yes, dear, yes, dear. So he's a distorted masculine, and she is just trying to punitively judge and execute everybody and being very bossy and scaring everyone. So it's very much a distorted divine feminine. And she's painting the roses red. And I gave it so much thought and I have it now. It is a different perspective because divine light is white. Like it's white light. That is where source is. It is the broken light that makes color. That's why we see colors, because it's distorted white light from source. That in that fall, we got dropped to the root chakra of survival. And so the painting of the roses is it's our divine nature that's covered up with all the gunk of this realm that is a distortion. But we are divine beings. And why do I have these two perspectives on this? Well, I've thought, sometimes we see things one way and then we understand more and then we see it a whole other way, such as have you ever had like a destructive friendship before, like maybe when you were younger, someone that had a bad influence on you, but you had this bond with them that you just couldn't break, or maybe that was with a relationship. But there are certain people in my life when I was younger and older, but like to just pick, there have been friendships I've had that were codependent or frankly unhealthy in the dynamic that existed at that time. And those patterns of that unhealthiness would loop and loop and loop and loop. But that bond, whether you call it love or codependence or whatever, would keep you in that cycle. I can think of probably three or four in my 20s of people that I was in that cycle with. And so something usually happens to shake that up and split friendships, relationships, or whatever. And they can feel when you're hurting like it's a betrayal or you've been abandoned, or if that's the case that someone inflicted that upon you, like, oh no, poor me, I've been abandoned. But after a time, you may realize, oh, well, I wasn't abandoned, I was freed. So that is a different perspective from a different lens. It's not from victimhood, but it's from a place of power. So you realize, wait a minute, this wasn't victimhood. I actually was freed from this loop. Thank goodness. Huzzah. And so I look at this painting the roses red situation that way as well of, you know, I used to look at it as just pretending to be someone you're not. But now I see it as our divine selves are covered up because of the realm we're living in. And the same is true of this Gatsby place. The divine self, the union of the masculine and feminine, of Gatsby and Daisy in their best selves was perfect. And it didn't need to be a proving of worthiness through financial means. It was just beautiful. And this realm distorted it such that it was actually the money that tore them apart and caused the demise. And so many stories about the divine masculine and feminine are this. But I wanted to share just an extraordinary picture from this time that I took as just reference for you guys to see. This image was on the wall of this Airbnb, this gold like bust of the man and the body of the feminine, and just the way it was placed. I know that the divine feminine ascends before the masculine, and I thought this. I don't regret staying in this place. I love how much it referenced what is really happening. The masculine coming after the feminine, seeking that levity instead of the density, going from the root chakra back up to the crown in that union. But the separation is so much there. Think now to looking at it, how interesting it is that there is a clock there, the time, the density of time, the density of Saturn, etc. So, wow, wow, that is was such an incredible trip, and I was able to drop codes and go to the ocean and do grid work for the masculine and feminine, the above and below. And there were other themes that were so intense around the element of sulfur, in fact, came up largely. And sulfur is a one of the three prima materia in alchemy. Sulfur represents the soul and also what is basically combustible. Combustible. And it's very reactive as far as like molecules. It's not stable. It's considered a very unstable. Um, yeah, but it's soothing too. Like it's a very unique and necessary and precious element. The other two of the prima materia are mercury, which is associated with the feminine, transcending life and death, the fluidity of it. It's also associated with communication. And then there's salt, which is really like the mm, crystallization, all of it coming together. So there are these three materials that are in alchemy to do this transformation. And sulfur, literally, I got my like rental car upgraded. I totally didn't like my upgrade to like a new Jeep, but it was the color of sulfur and very difficult to drive. And then, of course, I was going to the Natural History Museum. They had the biggest sulfur rock of all time. Everything that I got add the color of sulfur with it, which, in case you don't know, and this is like maybe a bad example, but this color, or I do have some actual sulfur over here. This is for realsies sulfur that I keep for the energy of it. And now that it's here, I need to take a sniff. It does smell like eggs, in case you're wondering, but this is like it's a radioactive color, basically, which I guess is kind of similar to this color. It's close. So that was just an incredible, incredible experience. Now, on my most recent um trip, this is going to be brief to segue, but I always get these messages from media about the divine masculine and feminine journey. And my daughter often delivers those messages because she has this crazy intuition. She will say like, "Oh, you should watch this." And I'll be like, "Really?" Because it's usually like a kid show or a cartoon or something I'm not really interested in. And then it ends up being the most profound thing ever. So we're on the flight to go to Chicago. And I'm looking through like Delta Airlines has like you can watch in-flight movies, and I was flipping through them and she's like, "You should watch the Lego movie." I'm like, "Seriously? I don't I'm a cartoon right now. Like, I don't know if I really want to do that." And she's like, "Trust me." Within 3 minutes of watching it, I'm like, "Why is she always right?" She's always right, because it is a story of being programmed. It's like social niceties. It's everything is awesome. It's those like songs that get in your head and everybody's suddenly happy. It's everybody's fulfilling a role. You're programmed into this matrix, literally a matrix. And then there's this conflict that arises, and there's this battle for someone to be the special or to like save everybody. Um, and he was just an ordinary guy. And then suddenly he could see how things really were. And then there's this divine feminine who's like all harsh and angry and edgy because she's hiding her true nature of being sweet and soft because it's not safe for her to be sweet and soft. But the thing that kills me is that on the way back, she's like, "You should watch the Lego 2 movie." And I'm like, "All right." So I do. And within 5 minutes, there are galactic beings that are coming to assist in the apocalypse land where the actual Statue of Liberty has fallen over, and the entire Lego world is like this desolate dystopia of beige sadness. Everybody's angry at each other and just living off of coffee and anxiety. And the president has left to go, President Business has left to go play golf. He's like, "You guys can take care of it. It'll be fine." And then there's this huge, like, divine marriage with galactic beings to help rebuild everything. And there's literally star babies. I mean, I start laughing. My daughter looks at me in flight, and I'm like, "They're doing a divine marriage to bring the love frequency back to Legoland." So, my recommendation, for better or for worse, is please watch, if you feel so inclined, any children's movie, but really the Lego movie and Lego movie part two. The second part is called chock full of symbols that just actually blew my mind. Actually blew my mind. It was just like, what? Are you kidding me? So there's that. I would like to shift by saying a few things about my upcoming events. Um, Next month, I am doing several themed events. I'm not giving you the dates now because I'm going to announce them on the first, but there will be a grid work event in which we will be working on weaving all of the elements of the planet together to connect to spirit. That's going to be the grid work event. I am also going to do a down the rabbit hole with the theme being symbolism, because symbolism is so exciting in all esoteric studies because it's like there's a secret language of things that if you don't understand those things, you don't get the full meaning of anything anywhere. So, like, just even going to Chicago and going into the Art Institute and to see all the ancient artwork that was coded for the era, because in certain eras all art was meant to be commissioned for religious purposes instead of personal expression. And so a lot of things were put into artwork that is coded to mean one thing when it seems like another thing, and that's around like shapes or animals and all sorts of things. So I'm going to be talking about symbolism so you can start recognizing some of the secret languages that are around you that you didn't even know about. And then for Awaken the Witch, I'm going to be talking about winter solstice, specifically Yule, because that is my lineage of, well, I come from Germanic history and Irish and English. And so a lot of that is pagan. Of course, that's not what I celebrated growing up because Pentecostal, but I'm going back to my roots. But every culture has its way of celebrating winter solstice, if that is something, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, that we celebrate. Everybody has a way of celebrating that. So I'll be going over Yule, but specifically also winter solstice, just to celebrate for the month. And I'm also going to be having my first gathering around Gen Z support for the ascension process because sweet Gen Z, they've been through it. And it's going to always be free, this event. So if you and I feel like it needs to be adult Gen Zers just because don't want to deal with parents signatures and things like that for engagement. But I feel like adult Gen Zers need a platform to be able to discuss what they're experiencing. So that's going to also be my first Gen Z event next month that is free. I am also going to do Ask Osho as I always do, and it's going to be great. So far this month, I still have an Ask Osho event on the 29th of November. I hope you join me. And so, that being said, like I need to ask Osho something. He has a message for us. He's got a message for us. So I'm going to get myself comfortable. And he was chatting with me earlier about some things to expect in this Aquarian age that are coming upon us. So I'm going to channel Osho for us. If you don't know who Osho is, he is my galactic guide that's been with me for about a year and a half. He's Arcturian. He's ninth dimensional. He is actually connected to plasma mycelium within the ethers of a dimensional universe that is far beyond what most of us can reach. So he has access to basically all Akash that is purified and not distorted. He is a lovely, lovely guide. And I feel great love and gratitude for him. So here we go. So there's a difference in elements from especially the Pluto placement that's gone into Aquarius from the earth element of Capricorn, which is rigid. It's rigid and it's grounded. It's very grounded and feels punitive actually. Like as I'm seeing like a school marm that's like, you must do this, 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 this. Very regimented in how things must be done, orderly, uh it feels like tradition is also important. Like it's always been this way, so we must always do it this way, kind of thing. So not open to new ideas or concepts. And so we're shifting from the density of an earth element, which feels like heavy, really like a rock. I love rocks, but it feels like gunk, like a rock. We're going from that, which is a polar opposite to the levity of the air element through Aquarius. What's beautiful, he's saying about this shift is not only is it very dramatic in the way that it moves quickly, like he's saying instead of the rolling stone, which is like rolling the stone, Sisyphus rolling the stone up the mountain every day for it to fall down to roll it up again. It's very much that earthly element of repeating and doing, the same trudging over and over and over to this showing me a kite, just like a person barely holding on to it, but it's like going all over the place. Is like it's your direct line, is what he's saying. It's your direct line to the divine. There is going to be so much less feeling of being daunted. Change will happen with levity, and oh, that's nice. Change will happen with levity instead of density, which is in opposition to that like rolling stone feeling. Uh, it's a very rapid and energetic shift. So he's showing me actually those fields of um I don't know what they're called, but they're like pinwheels that harness the energy of wind. What they're called. But I've driven through those fields of these things that generate energy, and it is he's saying you can in fact harness the wind. It's coming into new ways. Oh, he's saying it's around a new age of creating efficient and accessible energy sources through elements that have always existed. And the air element actually allows for connectivity to uh really, he's showing me like this divine etheric place in which all people can pull innovative ideas. And it's not just for some, he's saying it's for all. So there is no limitation to the capacity each individual has to innovate and to have accessibility to innovate with resources that are limitless. The age of Aquarius is going to bring the death of the old density and into the new levity, because Pluto is death and rebirth. And so while we will witness the death of what was prior, we will also witness the birth of what is to come through the earthly element, or from the earthly element to the air element, that will allow levity in transition and accessibility to all, because air cannot be owned. It's actually it's it's not something that you can capitalize on. It is free. The air is free. He's hearing me. Like I'm telepathically like, well, what about my patients that were pulmonary patients that were living on oxygen and they had to pay for oxygen? And also, what about pollution? And also, all these things. And he's like, no, the free energy sources that will be available are connected to the technological advancements that will allow for free energy. He is saying free energy, prepare yourself for free energy, innovation, and accessibility to all um, expression of innovation and solutions therein, is what he said. I don't use therein in my everyday life, but he's showing me actually like I had lots of engineering patients in my years counseling. And when an engineer is contracted with a corporation, within that contract, they do not own anything that they develop during the time they are contracted to that company. So even if they were to invent something that doesn't have anything to do with the company they work for, it would belong to the company they work for, and they would not be able to share it with the world. So it really limits the capacity of great thinkers to create and innovate uh, in ways that help the human race and the planet. And he's saying that those chains are going to be loosed. So if you imagine all, oh wow, that makes me want to cry. Just because I've worked with these guys, largely guys, and I love them so much with their beautiful minds and their ability to dream and envision, but they are in these golden handcuffs. And he's saying, imagine they're given the freedom to create and heal the planet. They would come together so quickly. These minds, if they are not bound to a corporate prison, they could create without limits. Saying the air is free, the air is free, the air is free. The air is free, air is thought, its connection to the divine, its knowledge, its innovation. It's knowledge, it's innovation. He's also saying, think of every single artist who has to make ends meet and is too exhausted to create their art and their vision. They will be freed to create their vision. The world will be bathed in colors. The world will be bathed in colors. And now he's showing me when I went to the Institute, Art Institute, I cried with two exhibits. One was Picasso and one was Kandinsky. And Kandinsky has always made me cry. And I feel like it's because it's light codes, but it's also the colors are so brilliant and beautiful. And I just want colors around me all the time. And he's saying the world will be made of color again, and the world will be very quickly and beautifully rebuilt by the great minds that have been chained. The chains will be loosed. The chains will be loosed. He's repeating it over and over and over. He's saying for us now, before the time of the disintegration of the previous age, as we're witnessing the disintegration, he's saying in order for you to create support for yourself during this transition, yeah, okay. I had breath work while I was in Chicago with my girl Gina, and it was very uncomfortable for me, and I got through it, and it was very expanding for me because I had too much stuff in me and not enough space for it, and I felt really constricted. And he's saying breath work, working with the air element is really vital to create space for the energy to flow through you as air needs to move through you. So if you can work with breath work, if you can spend time outside in the wind, if you can honor and engage yourself in anything that you associate with air personally or globally, that could be with birds. It's listening to the avian activations. It's I'm just Wicked just came out. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen it on Broadway. Well, not on Broadway. I've seen it off Broadway, touring company, but I'm hearing defying gravity and just like wind running through Elphaba and just like defy gravity, release your relationship to the limitations of gravity and engage in the vision of levity, levitation, unbound. I don't know about you, but I love that so much. I mean, not only am I super Aquarian, but I just love the idea of just freedom and color and beauty and innovation and potential and possibility. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Osho. Thank you, Osho. I hope to see you at the Osho event. I also channel one-on-one sessions if you ever want Osho to bring through stuff for you. And not just, I channel anything, not just Osho, but just Osho. Osho, you're amazing. But yeah, that's on my website. I am so thankful to be able to share this with you today. It's a beautiful message. I'm so grateful for all of you, and I'm grateful for my guides and my lessons and the wisdom that I'm able to access and share with other people. And whatever resonates for you is for you. And I just want to remind you that you have all the answers inside of you. And if you seek answers from other people, make sure that they resonate with you before you accept them as truth, because you are your own guru. You already have all this knowledge. I'm just reminding you about some of it. So thank you so much. Until next time.